Hello everyone and welcome to the Property Hustler Show. My name is Andrew, this is Ping, and today we are joined with a very special guest who is a multifamily renovator. He is the founder of the new up-and-coming Discord group, Grow, which is for real estate investors, so you ought to check that out. And a lover of all foods, the great, the one and only, Taco.
Hey guys.
Anybody who's looking at real estate, when you start talking about real estate business, right, there are so many levels
100%.
and there is a lot of money to be made. What you're talking about with the importing thing reminds me of my uncle. So my uncle in Singapore, he's a developer. He builds and he started to internalize things to supplement his building. He will do like buildings, full-on buildings, condos. In order to cost down, he also opened up a company that was essentially selling supplies. So he could sell supplies to his own projects, and he was able to sell to his competitors, right?
Right.
But he essentially internalized this, what wasn't a big expense, into a revenue stream, and he was able to save money on it. There's a lot of money, and you see a lot of people doing it, bringing in affordable supplies for the problem that Canada's having today, which is housing.
Yes, no, for sure. I mean, it's kind of like why I started doing it. I just started doing so much volume, and instead of outsourcing and spending that money outward, why not bring it inward? And then as we expand, we've created a revenue stream for ourselves. And the other great portion of it is we niche in this space. Like a lot of the contractors, and I'm sure you guys know, you guys probably hired millions of contractors. They don't really care about real estate investors. They just care about their job and their pocket, right? Good for them. That's how we should all be. But like for me, I worked with a real estate investor and he was like, hey man, I got this unit. I did it. And he was like, hey, here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one. And in my head, I was like, bing. This is it. This is it. These guys are just going to keep asking me for more. You can't get that with a residential homeowner. That's why I started all these companies and kind of like created this system, because if I could make it turnkey, all we got to talk about is what the next address is.
Yeah.
And I have your reno spec. I've built out your finishes, your fixtures, your paint colors, your floor colors, whatever it is that you love. And I'm just saying, hey, Andrew, same thing as last time. You're going to be like, actually, no, we changed the light fixtures. Now we're using this instead. And then that's it. That's the conversation we have to have. And that would allow real estate investors or people who are doing this in this industry optimize their time on taking care of what needs to get taken care of. Like renos shouldn't be the biggest problem. And which is why I come on social media and I talk a lot about the renos, because is because nobody talks about it.
Yeah.
But if you ask every single investor, I went to that conference and I met 1 million people. Every single person, I was like, where do you run over? Where are your biggest headaches? Where do you run over budget? Where do you go over time? Where do you have the most headaches? Every person said the renos.
Yeah.
And if you do a lot of these education courses and programs and stuff like that, nobody talks about the renos.
Real estate's a very sexy industry, and people veer away from that, which can get a little messy.
Here's the thing. Anything hands-on, people don't want to talk about it in real estate industry. Like they just want to talk about the numbers. Oh, you're the investor. You're only doing the deal analysis.
It's safe. Numbers are safe, right?
Spreadsheets,
right? Like A plus B equals C. And it's either going to equal C in the positive or C in the minus. And depend on your risk tolerance, you decide how you want to go. But the renos, it's like this, like hiring contractors, dealing with just dealing with the people alone is a mess. And then, I think you can really fine tooth and systematize the renos, which is what I've done, which is how has allowed me to scale. Like contractors come in and I just basically tell them, forget about everything you know. This is how we do things. And this is why. And then I am coaching contractors to optimize their business so that they can make the most amount of money, and I help them acquire contracts through real estate investors or continue to give them business if they don't want to scale. It's just, you got to understand the people. So I think renos can be very simplified. It can be complicated, but if you can simplify the process, then that's like kind of, I think, my bread and butter, which is why I feel like I can talk a lot about it.
How many layers are there between, let's say, the people doing the work and you?
In my business, it's myself that like kind of, I do more of the out-facing sales and like meeting investors and kind of like coaching them and educating them on what they need to do in their project.
Yeah.
Because that's a whole other topic of conversation. And then there's the execution of the renos, which my younger brother runs that company, and he has a couple of project managers that we do all of like the management, the supervision, and then a lot of the guys underneath are all subtrades. They are all individual companies that some of them have worked with us for years, some of them not as much, but like we're only onboarding new contractors on a 1-to-1 ratio. So I have one project manager, or my brother has one project manager for each new contractor that we onboard, so that we can coach them and teach them the system that we're using. And because we've learned I've done like 1,500 units, like in my time period. Some of them I did myself, and some of them I've managed. And I got to watch different contractors tackle the same problem over and over and over and over again. All kinds of different skill sets, different types, and then I'm like, that's a good idea. Hey guys, when you're doing the kitchen, this is how we do it. When you're doing this is how you do it. And I know what works, what doesn't work. Sometimes it's hard to get into their heads because they're their own businessmen, and I get it. But I have so much experience watching this be done many, many different ways. I've seen guys spray. I've seen guys use brush and roller. Which one's better? Depends on the guys. Some guys are phenomenal. Like I had a guy, his name's Joseph. He could paint. When we were painting houses, he would like tie a brush to a stick and be like 20 feet away, and that guy would not touch the ceiling.
He'd draw
like
a straight
would
line.
not touch it. He would draw
crazy.
like best guy on the planet.
There's
honestly,
artists out there, right?
And that's where I think there's a lot of the misconception. People look at contractors as like dropouts or like uneducated or whatever, but like they're truly artists. And the big point about them being artists is that you got to look at artists differently. Some artists are in it for the money, and some artists are in it for the art. You can go to Montreal, for example, and you'll see a lot of street sidewalk art, and it's done by, homeless people or people who are barely making ends meet.
Yeah.
But the stuff on the sidewalk is incredible.
Yeah.
And then you can go to a fancy museum and look at this super expensive painting. Doesn't make it better than the art on the ground. No. It's who that person is and what they want out of it. And that, like, I find is like truly understanding the contractor, which when I do a lot of art topics, I talk about understanding who the contractor is. Is it a small guy? Is it a big guy? Is he just trying to make ends meet for the month, or is he trying to grow and establish a business and a brand? They're going to want different things. And like, if you can understand that, you'll really remove a lot of like the headaches that come with contracting.
Yeah, the truth is like people who just got into real estate, right? It's hard to wear so many different hats, right? Especially a role of contractor. Now you have to understand the construction, the renovation planning, right? Where to find the sub trades, right? And even the material supply selection. Every time I go to Home Depot, I get overwhelmed right away. Like, how do I know which one to pick? And I feel like this is where things get out of control because you end up choosing things that you prefer or you're familiar with, and that item end up becoming a lot more expensive. Or you end up hiring a wrong person who takes your deposit and never perform the work. So question for you.
Okay.
For any newer investor that gets into real estate, what do they need to look for when it comes to selecting the right contractor?
There's a few things for that. For that, I would look at myself as a new investor and what are my strengths. Maybe you have a little bit of handyman knowledge and know-how. So maybe you don't need to hire a really experienced contractor, and experience does not equal price, just so that we're clear. You could hire a more experienced guy in the industry because he knows what he's doing and you're going to babysit him a lot less. But if you have a good background and you understand some of the renos, maybe you did renos growing up with your father like I did, then I don't need to hire the most experienced, best management guy. I could hire somebody who has some skill and I can help them along the way with the other skills or help put the pieces that they need in place. So that's what I would say for a newer investor. Like, you got to look inward. Like, if you're really good at Excel sheets and you know how to run numbers, well, then you don't need to hire a coach to tell you how to run numbers to find a deal. Like, you already know how to do the math. You don't need that. You need to figure out how you're going to get your materials, maybe talk to more property management, which isn't talked about a lot enough as well. Like how you're going to exit the project, right? Not how to buy it and know you can make money on it. That's relatively easy, I would say, because it's just math. That's what I think for new investors is really look at yourself. And it's so easy to just stick with the stuff that you know, right? Like, I'm a reno guy. I'm always like into the reno space, but I try to hang out with you and like other guys that like run a lot more numbers or like, have different strategies on acquiring deals. I don't know how to acquire deals. I mean, deals, people obviously send me some deals and stuff like that, but I get a deal from a guy, I'm going to just send it to my numbers guy. That's not my job. My job is I know what I'm good at and stick to what you're good at and don't partner with people that are good at the same thing. If you both have money, well, you need to work in partners. So you two shouldn't be partners, right? Like that's kind of what I've learned. For a newer investor, that's like the best advice I could say, regardless of renos or not renos, is find the missing piece.
Yeah, that's a great advice.
Recognize your skill set and then supplement the rest.
100%. I think that's going to take you further than anything else that you're going to learn in the industry.
Which actually comes to the point of infrastructure, because I want to loop back just very quickly to the layering, because I know you said you have your brother running essentially the execution of the construction side, and then he has project managers, right? And then he hires out sub-trades. And are the sub-trades specialized? Because when you're doing volume and new construction and just full, like everything's standardized.
Yep.
I know some people will hire GCs, but other people will hire like specific subtrades so that they layer the work. Tilers come in and all they do is just tile, bathroom, kitchen. It's like everybody's always doing, each subtrade is highly specialized. Is that how you do it, or do you?
I have a hybrid approach. So I have some internal guys that work for us, and I usually call them the cleanup guys.
Yeah.
Right? Because I want the high volume guys, like the specialized guys, to keep pumping. I don't need to get them to come back to fix one tile, because by the time it took him to replace that one tile, he could have had 5 bathrooms done. So I have my cleanup guy who's going to take that extra time and effort because he's hourly and he knows he's there to get the job done. Those guys I have doing that. We have the specialized guys when we're doing a high volume project, like when we have like a 20 unit building or a 10 unit building, it's all vacant. I need a lot of manpower, and like I can't internalize all that manpower, so we'll use specialized guys. So the drywallers to go, right? Like the painters, like all those guys to be high volume. And then there's like the onesie twosies. Maybe you have one unit in your thing. I don't want to be managing a rotation of people in your unit, your one unit. I'll just send a crew that can handle the full unit top to bottom. So that's kind of how I use the approach. I use the approach based on your project. And that's kind of like a lot for my renos. It's like, what's your project? What's your goal? When we get to materials, if you're doing a flip, the materials you use in a flip are not the same materials you use in a 30-year hold. Completely different materials, but nobody talks about it. Right. And then same thing with the layers, right? I do it based on your approach. What are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to get this thing done tomorrow? When's your refi date? That's going to matter, right?
Right? Like, By the way, he is a construction guy. Like, honestly, you're right. A lot of people don't talk about it, but not a lot of people will understand the idea behind like production line workers, right? There's people in construction who just bam, 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 bam. And the role of whoever's managing them is to make sure that whatever work is being done ahead of them allows the next person to work. You have to make sure that they don't get into a pinch point in their process. People need to be able to keep moving. Otherwise, the whole assembly line crashes. And then you have, and this is what, Dennis is actually good at. The glue. We call this role the glue. Somebody who's just going in between the cracks and gluing things together that maybe got missed, because you can't have the production lines guys doing that kind of stuff. So this is the thing that that definitely a lot of real estate investors miss, because this is a big in-between place.
100%.
Because people watch the TV shows and it's just like, it's a dump, and then it's finished. Magic, right? Yeah. Bam.
It's funny. I can see that you have a lot of things going through your head right now. Like, so many questions.
It's cool. Yeah, no, it's funny because when I was hanging out with Ping, and I've been dealing with Ping a lot more than I've talked to you, and then Ping was like, you and Andrew are gonna nerd out, and like I could see it. We have the
this is because there's so many opportunities, and then when you start thinking construction, because especially if we start getting bigger with it, one of the things that I always can't seem to gnaw my mind around is Canada when it comes to construction at large, because like you're doing now work on scale, and you've made it work. And a lot of people don't want to tackle it because you're actually dealing with something. There's a lot of moving parts to this. There are 100%. A lot of moving parts. Like the fact that you're opening up so many businesses and getting everything in together, that's a lot to manage. And honestly, tremendous respect for you for the fact that you've been able to do that, because like some people look at that and it's just like, I don't even want to go there.
I found the missing pieces. Honestly, like there's nothing like, I'm a part of a bunch of the different things, but like it's not me. Like honestly, I'm going to say this right now, like it is the team. The team at the end of the day is the biggest growth of success. And it's a large part in us and me like pushing down and understanding the team and what makes them tick. Yeah. Because every trade or every person isn't motivated by like, I'll just give you an extra $500 if you finish this faster. That might not be his trigger. Like people are passionate about different things. I love tacos, maybe just getting me a case of tacos might make me go further or whatever, right? Like, so it's really truly understanding this is a people business and not a money business.
Yeah.
Money is great, but money doesn't drive everybody.
No.
And when you get into the trades, you can truly see what it is that drives. Some guys just want a case of beer, man. Like some guys, you give a guy a case of beer.
You do that all the time.
And they will, man, you may as well have given them $1 million.
Yeah.
Right? And some guys would prefer, like one of the guys I know, he had a small kid. My kids are getting rid of the bikes. I gave them the bikes. And man, he was like, dude, thank you. Like, you don't know how much that meant to me. Like his wife's happy. He's happy. Like his kid's happy. That's powerful.
Yeah.
And being able to understand that in people, which is what I think I do really well, it's what's going to help me build my best team. And then my team is now pushing with me instead of trying to like, pull me in, like trying to get my attention or being like, look, I'm working hard, man. Look at what I'm doing, right? They're like, no, I'm working hard because I know he's going to take care of me and he's got my best interests and I want him to succeed and us to succeed, right? Which is part of the big reason I started that Grow network, because of I want it to be a team effort and not about taco and my fancy hat and like I'm the smartest guy on the planet. I'm not. I will sit here and I would happily take advice from you from Renos. I'm not that. That's not who I am. That's not what I believe in. I think the best thing is if you can like look at what you're not good at and learn from somebody else. That's it. And it doesn't matter at the top or at the bottom. When I was in the army, that I learned in the military a lot.
Where'd you serve?
In Canada in the reserves for 16 years, I believe.
Wow.
I was like a drill sergeant, instructor. Like I did, all sorts of different stuff. I was talking to Ping about it kind of loosely. But in the military, especially in the reserves, you don't know who is, just because like that person is out under ranks you and I'm the master corporal. That guy could have like a crazy business degree. He could maybe manage 5,000 people in a factory. I don't know that about him. But if I treat him like he's beneath me because his rank is below mine, doesn't mean he's got way more experience than I do. So it doesn't matter if you're a contractor or a doctor or a genius or whatever, man. It like, honestly, you can always learn from anybody in any capacity. Even my kids teach me stuff. Like you can always learn from anybody. And like, if you can kind of like really get past that ego and understand that into people, you'll be able to make people help push with you and you'll create more successful businesses.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, every time I talk to you, there's no ego in the conversation here. Yes, it's very, like, very gentle, very comfortable all the time, right? A lot of renovation people, like people in that field, it's like, hey, here's how I do it, right? Like, it's like, my way is the correct way. And that's why we constantly seeing the subcontractor, subtrades, like, fighting criticizing other people's work all the time.
It's just like, they go into a drop site, but you're all like, well, what clowns you hired to do this job, right? It's always, hey, some guy with a taco hat? No, it's like
it's so easy. It's so easy to pick apart anybody's work. That's easy. Yeah. Go do it. That's hard, right? Like, it's easy to critique it. Like anybody be like, oh man, look at that, YouTube video. Like he could have done this, and this better. Yeah, but he got 50,000 views. Where are your 50,000 views, right? Like it's so easy to be critical on stuff, and that's it's an ego thing, and it's tough, part of human nature and everything like that. But I think if you can look past that, you can really change who you are and how much you're going to succeed.
For sure.
By the way, you are very humble. And actually, just for the sake of people listening, at least what I'm gathering, and I think this is also the element that a lot of people are missing that you've illustrated is the catalyst portion. Because you're saying that, it is about the team. And it is about the people who you're able to put together, but the team you're able to put together is also a reflection of you being able to attract them. The missing gap that I often see for people who are into real estate, it doesn't matter if you're white collar or blue collar, but there's often a gap in between. The white collar people very often are awfully disconnected with what actually happens on ground level. And people who get into real estate who are on ground level, a lot of contractors, they mess up things that white collar people maybe don't, like all the financing aspects, the budgeting, the spreadsheets, and there's a complete disconnect. So somebody who's able to understand both sides is very formidable in the real estate market. They can accomplish a lot if they can bridge that gap. And I think you're doing that very well. And you illustrated that even from your army example. The army has certain stereotypes that go along with it when it comes to people who have these giant egos and just really like to tell people what to do.
100%.
But if you're in a position of power and you're willing to understand the people who you are responsible for, we don't need to say too much about how and why that will be tremendously effective.
Yeah, that's a leadership skill, right?
Yeah.
I would say the military spends tons and tons of money in training leaders and stuff like that. Like, I think a lot of my success, I would say, has to do with my military experience. The stress that you got to operate on. We were watching a video, like this guy's a medic. He's trying to like provide first aid for this guy, this soldier who was injured, and he's just getting yelled at the whole time. Like, what are you doing? Stop looking at me. Focus on your job. And just kind of like, and you're under this crazy pressure, and you got to think. And in the army, you have to think, and not just think. You got to make a decision. And that, I think, is like, everybody tries to be perfect, run the numbers perfectly. We talk about like the data gatherers, like want to try to learn everything. Like, man, you just got to go there. You're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
It's how you learn from your mistakes and how you adapt and overcome. And that's how you achieve. But in the army, you have to make that decision. You're in the middle of a battlefield. There is no like, hold on, let's have another meeting about this, or let's review the numbers. Yeah. Like, it's there, it happens. You got to go, and you're going to succeed or not succeed. And that's part of being an executioner. In the army, you always go back and you revisit how you executed the battle or whatever you're doing. Take on the positive, the negatives. What could you have done better? And then you just do it again.
Sounds like the opposite of politicians.
Right? And if you, and you just do it again. And if you keep doing that over and over again, like, sure, your first property, are you going to hit a home run? Probably not. But the second one should be better than the first one. The fourth one, the fifth one, as long as you keep going, you are going to learn, assuming you are adapting everything you did wrong the first time and correcting. You don't even need to correct everything, just one or two things.
Yeah.
If you keep doing one or two things better, I do some motivational stuff, and I always talk about, like, stop looking at me or Andrew or Ping or whoever's out there. Like, look at yourself. What are you doing better than yesterday? That's what makes you better. That's what makes you great. And eventually, if you look back after 20 years and you're constantly fixing one or two little things, you're going to be like, man, I am such a better human, or I've accomplished so much more because of little steps, not a big step.
By the way, there's a productivity trick that I want to share here because it's very highly relevant. So, you know, like how you can 7x your productivity, right? A lot of people take maybe like 1 week, right? Weekly meeting to make that decision. If you can just shorten that decision-making process from 7 days to 1 day only, and you're making 7 decisions throughout the week, your productivity is literally 7 times, right? Because now you're not delaying or postponing that specific decision that you need to make in order to execute. You can make that decision, execute quickly. So I think in military, like what you just described, is that if you don't make a decision, you're going to die. If you make a decision, you might still die, but you also have a maybe additional like 50, 70% of chance of where you can survive. Right, so it's all about making decision as quickly as you can. Stop thinking, and if you do something that you don't feel correct, just make adjustment.
And that I think is like another big lesson too, for sure. Especially growing all the businesses I have, is like you can always adjust.
Yeah.
Right. Like I can make a decision and it might not go so well, and you'll be like, you know what? Actually, change of plans, guys. Let's scoot over to the left. Right.
Yeah.
Like that's it. It's just making small decisions, but you got to keep moving forward, or you're never gonna get to the end.
Yeah.
Right. Where like I find the data gatherers that like just go to every educational event, and you know I've met some of them and I've seen them at events and I've talked to them, and they're like, yeah, I'm getting ready to buy real estate. Like a year later, I'm getting to buy real estate. Like just buy real estate. Figure out the next problem. Your first problem is buying the real estate, which is what I love with the programs and stuff that you do. You guys just teach the first two pieces, which is like how to get the deal and like start the deal.
Yeah, and risk
everything else is going to come later, because if you don't do those first two pieces, you're not going to get to the remaining 10, 20.
People tend to focus on the high level of everything, but the truth is that you can never learn everything, because once you learn a little bit about this area, you're going to feel like, I don't know enough. There's a depth for that specific area, right? So what we're trying to do is to bring everything back to the first two deals. We're providing a full solution for just finding deals and how to raise a bit of capital. Once you get to these two, I'm sure you're going to have enough confidence to figure out the rest, right? And the truth is that there's tons of resources out there.
There's so much resources, right?
Free resource too, yeah.
Which is why we built, like why I figured that I'd start this Grow networking, because it's like on our Discord platform so that we could just give out free resources. Really, it's like one day it's you and I just talking about, you know, different stuff. Like yesterday we talked about underpinning. It's just us having a conversation and talking about my problems and your problems, but those other people have these same problems. So we're doing that. Another thing we want to do on our Discord platform, which we go live like 3 times a week. I want to go 5 days a week live with a different person. I don't want it to be me every single time. That's not good growth. If you're only listening to one person, you're only getting one set of experience, one set of skill set, right? I want to learn from you. You do flips. I don't do flips. You've done way more flips than I have. Doesn't mean you're better than me or I'm better than you. We just have different ways of doing different things. So like if we can collaborate and talk about the headaches, and like maybe we can share some like little things that will help us pivot and become more successful together. So one of the things I want to do is get a newer investor, a guy that's just starting out, maybe somebody from your program that's like just kind of acquired the deal, and let's put a mortgage broker, contractor, realtor, property manager, a numbers guy, and let's sit them in the room and be like, okay, ask us anything. You have you have your dream team. Ask us what you want. What's next for you? Where are your hurdles? And let's start giving out those answers. The majority of the people don't know what to ask or who to ask. And if you put everybody there, then they're just going to start asking questions, and it's going to really open up and unlock what people are really missing in the space, versus like just me teaching, and you guys just listening. I don't think it's conductive.
It's not. It's not a very conducive learning space, and we see this in the education system all the time with the way that they do it. Lectures are effective with learning very specific things if you are there for that problem, but it might not necessarily answer your questions. Which actually, I think this is a good way to segue into the teaching element. A lot of the time, people always say, well, how do you do X, Y, and Z? And maybe I can't afford to hire someone right now, and therefore I'm looking for free resources. And I remember this one guy was telling me that you maybe can't afford to hire somebody, but you can get in a room with somebody. You can always go network, find somebody. And today with all of this, with the Discord group, for example, that's getting into a room with people. Get into a room where the conversation is happening and learn. Listen, open your mind, and be educated. That is the easiest and most affordable way to bridge that gap. The other thing I feel that's important to mention is that people, when selecting who they want to listen to, if you actually are able to select somebody, honestly, demonstrating skills like what you've illustrated, being able to understand your audience, because being able to teach somebody largely relies on being able to understand their learning gaps and their hurdles. If you can't get into their shoes, you're going to be telling them something, but they may not be receiving it the way you understand it. So being able to understand people's problems is huge. How do you teach somebody these things if you don't know where they're coming from?
For sure. And even like the way people learn, right? Like everybody's different. Some people learn from like, taking notes. Some people learn from like reading a book and memorizing. So like getting in the room and figuring out what you need to learn, and then you choosing like what the best way for you to learn is, whether it's hiring a coach, going through like a free program online, or, buying a book and reading it. Like you have all the options there. It's just understanding what you need to learn, I think, is the most important thing, which is why our community is like out there. Cause yeah, you're right. Like you gotta, and right? Like I don't try to be like, I'm the superstar, I'm the rock star, everybody listen to me. I just know what I know. If I can help 2 or 3 people make one less mistake more than I did, that's great for me, right? Like I'm excited to do that. That's like the fun thing that I'm doing right now in my life.
And the fact you're able to pinpoint these things is amazing. Actually Ping has been doing something very regimented that I actually find very impressive, that you're able to identify these things, is that sometimes students, they'll ask all kinds of questions, and their questions are all over the place. And if they're asking me, I'm just like, there's so much information in here. I'm just like, you have that question. Okay, answered. And Ping will sometimes stop them and say, okay, that's not the right question right now. You're in stage 2. You're asking stage 9. And you need to fill in the gaps. Otherwise, stage 9 answer doesn't make sense.
Right.
And people have questions, but they don't know how to ask the right questions. But you might know what the right questions they have is.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
So we have a lot of students who actually ask me, hey, where did you find all the suppliers? I'm like, did you get the property? Because how come I don't know? I don't know that yet. Right? It's like, oh, no, I haven't. I just wanted to know. I'm like, okay, we'll get there. Don't worry. Right? Let's figure out how to like secure one property, actual profitable deal. And then we can talk about the value add. Then supplier comes in. And maybe the person that you need to talk to is Mark, right? Like try to hire a professional to do that approach. And so you don't even need to know where you're going to get the supplies, who you're going to actually hire to do the work, how do you do the contract. It's like, none of that is relevant, right? So I'm trying to like simplify this process as much as possible for anybody who's at that current stage. I do have a question on the more like a business level for you though.
I'm here.
Let's break it down into 2 different ways. One is I want to kind of go down a little bit for individual investor who's looking to hire and obviously like do a bit of a let's say value add. You're talking about the skill set, right? Let's say a person like me, I don't know a lot about construction stuff. I know a little bit, but that just means that I don't know enough, right? I don't know enough to even execute. Where would you say I should go hire or look for that traits to actually complete the job? And number 2 is that how do you actually hold them accountable?
Okay, so those are some good questions. For me, if I'm a new investor, I would say referrals is a good one, right? Like, because you don't know, like every contractor, honestly, for me, I've hired and fired like all kinds of contractors, expensive contractors, cheap contractors, middle of the road contractors, guys with websites, guys with fleets of cars, guys that just like writing invoices on a napkin. I've hired them all. They're artists. Which one you get? It's like a crapshoot. You got to go with like, what are they reliable at? Can they do the job? You're never going to know. Honestly, you're never going to know if you hire a contractor that says he's a taper and he's the best thing since sliced bread. How do you know? If I hire Andrew to paint a photo of me because Andrew showed me a bunch of pictures of photos that he's quote unquote done, how do I know he's done it? How can I see that? Like, unless there's some like videos, which kind of helps now, like you can see a lot more on Instagram, like social media, people actually doing the work. But how do you see that? It's very difficult. Until he starts painting, I'm going to know that he knows what he's doing or he's not. If he shows up with a bunch of brand new tools, probably not a good contractor. I don't know though. I mean, like, you know what? It's cheaper to buy used tools. So like a guy showing up with used tools could also show up and still do a bad job. I would use referrals. At first, you're going to use referrals, right? Because you're going to want to understand the contractor. And that's what it is at the end of the day. Understand the contractor. Every contractor that we use, we rank them by skill set. So are they good at trimming? 1 to 10. And we have like a little note section. So they're great at trimming, just don't let them caulk. Like they could trim the wall, like bam, like great job. But then they put caulking on like my 3-year-old, and it's like, oh my god, now we gotta fix it, right? Like, but the trim job was perfect, right? Like the carpentry side of it was perfect. So we ranked the guys, and there is not a person that you're gonna hire that's gonna be perfect. If you have that expectation, get it out of your head. You're gonna hire a guy, and there's gonna be issues. You're gonna hire me, there's gonna be issues, because it takes time to understand each other, because we're all people, and I have people, and it's a people business. Contracting is the people business. Go with a referral, best price, lowest price, middle price. It's gonna be a crapshoot. There's some risks, and that's why if you go on our social media or whatever, I teach a lot about understanding who the contractor is. So like a father-son team that's just 2 guys working out of their car, and the only point of contact is their cell phone number, I would say lower the deposit, because he's a high risk of disappearing. He changes his phone number, how are you going to find him? We have a factory, we have a shop, we have an office. I'm not disappearing a bunch of stuff overnight. If I got like fleets of cars, I have project managers, I got to change like 10 phone numbers, I got to hire like shipping containers to come and like load up my, like for me to disappear is going to be a lot harder.
Right.
Like that's the risk that you got to take, and you got to look at and understand from who you hire.
Now, let me ask you a different question, because also on the same subject.
I thought there was 2 questions.
Yes, but before we get into that, but
I have questions now too.
Yeah,
so
because I want to get that out of you. So let's say if you say you were doing like 20 units per month, let's say if we double that, is your team able to actually handle that?
I would have to hire more people, like different trades. So I would hire bigger contractors that I know can handle that workload, which is kind of why I started my material supply company, because now I'm getting introduced to a lot more contractors, and I'm starting to understand their volume based on their orders. So now, because I get a lot of investors calling me from all over, like, Mark, can you fly out to Sudbury? I wish. Right? Like I've done some projects, in different places, but it's not feasible for me to be everywhere. I can help other contractors adopt my system and do some like learning from me, and I can help coach them to become better executioners. Material's a lot easier to ship around. People, it's a lot harder, right? Like they're like, I have a big job. Can you like fly your guys or your team? Like, they have families, they have kids, they have responsibilities. It's tough to move people.
Yeah, and money's not always the motivator.
No, exactly, right? It's understanding people. What motivates people? Some guys, for sure, in a heartbeat, they'll be like, more money, I'm in. Other guys will be like, I'm in, but my wife's going to divorce me. And like, and then like there's a whole bunch of other layers that he's going to have to deal with. And he's probably not going to be optimizing his performance because now he's not there for the right reasons. That's kind of like why I did that, because now I know different groups and different people, and I'm already starting to do that. I have a guy, he's like, oh, I have a job here, and I'm like, okay, no problem. I know this guy because he's ordered X, Y, and Z from me, and I've talked to him, and so like we're starting a Contractor Monday like afternoon calls where I'm just going to try to get a bunch of trade guys, and I'm just going to tell them why it's so great to work with real estate investors and how simple it can be.
Yeah.
And I'm just all the guys that we're working with, there's a bunch from different areas. So then I can just refer people to that contractor and be like, look, this is how I think you should quote. This is how I think you should ask for budgets, or like, how to propose the contract to the investor. Because I'm also an investor. So I know what I would like to see. And I know, like, the 2 sides of the opportunity. And if you can understand both sides of the opportunity, then you're going to be a great fit.
So people think that you're running a kitchen manufacturing business, but you're actually using that to recruit talent. That's crazy. That's smart. That's kind of like what we're doing with our program,
that's actually. Yeah. And actually, that's, by the way, I love the way you think. Like, honestly, because we actually even did that through the property management business when we first started. We used that to essentially recruit good real estate investors. Not recruit them, but to connect us, right? Because you don't recruit them, you network with them. But this was a great way for us to network with some players who understood real estate.
We're in a housing crisis. There's no shortage of need for good people to do the renovations. Yeah. Why not connect myself with as many as possible right now? Okay. This is like the biggest opportunity. Don't release this video.
No, honestly, by the way, like,
cut it.
I feel like I should have been writing up some of my questions now, because honestly, like we're touching on things that I think need to be discussed. Okay, just a bit of a mental note. The thing that I find interesting that I do want to talk in a minute or so is actually the recruitment of talent here versus like the way construction is done in other countries. Because I've traveled a lot, and actually it's a bit of a bother to me the way that things are here in Canada. We're overly educated, we're overly white collar, I think, in many respects, and there's not enough people who want to do what is considered, relatively speaking, at least hard work. That's actually what's making, I think, the trades extremely expensive. Anything that is paid nothing in other countries is extremely expensive here, ranging from nursing to plumbers and everything in between, mechanics. You can make a lot of money in this, and in other countries it's the opposite. So we have like a very first world problem here. There is money in that,
100%.
right? And it's crazy. So I do want to talk about that, but I feel like I have a good question here that is going to be good for the audiences that we need to touch on. When you're asking, how to find trades, how do you hold them accountable, and talking about the catalyst, I feel like a good bridging point that people need to tackle, and I want to know what you would say is, how do they throttle their expectations? Because real estate investors, when they're hiring contractors, is very different from when you're hiring a contractor to renovate your house. When you renovate your house, you can be nitpicky about a million things. I see a lot of people in getting into real estate fighting with a contractor over things that I'm looking at. I'm just like, this doesn't matter.
Yes.
And how do you determine what matters? Because there's probably a mid-range for real estate investors as to what should matter, and probably something that's in their head that's bothering them is not actually investment related.
Of course, yeah, no. So one of the things I teach, I think 3 things. The first one is 2-foot rule. Stand 2 feet away from the thing that you're looking at, and if it still really bothers you, then change it. The other thing I say is 90%. Get to 90% before you start to nitpick.
That's actually a very high. Ours is lower. Ours is 75%.
No,
Once
man.
you get to
No, man.
70-80%, you're good.
No, get to 90%
Yeah.
before you start to nitpick, because
Wow.
time is always against you. Sure, I would say 75, or even like for me 50, or like I do it in phases of work. Just because I'm more experienced, more educated, I understand what stopping a person now is going to cost me down the road, like in the same like project, how much it's going to delay me, how that affects my business or my client's business. Most newer investors aren't going to have that kind of understanding. So I say get to 90%, but always use a 2-foot rule. Trim's going up, and you're like, oh, I don't like those joints. I'm like, well, go stand in the middle of the room, and then tell me if that's what really bothers you. Because you're going to stand in the middle of the room, you're going to start to see the whole wall and not that one piece. And then you're like, actually, this window that's like leaking, that's probably a bigger problem than this trim that we're fighting about, right? Yeah. So that's why I say use a 2-foot rule. Like stand 2 feet away from the wall or the bathroom or whatever. See the whole thing.
Yeah.
And is that the thing that's really jumping out at you? Then fix it. But if it's not, just move on. The other thing I say is like when you bought the house, when you do the walkthrough, when you bought your house, how many things did you notice that were wrong? And then after when you moved in, you were living in it, you were like,
I can settle.
Fuck, whatever, it's fine, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not going to bother you. So those are the 3 things. 2-foot rule, get to 90%, because everybody will stop at 30, and then like months go by, and a month every time is like $3,000 in rent, $4,000 in rent, especially in today's environment. That is like, is that $3,000 worth, right? 3 months delay, $12,000, like that. It adds up.
Yeah.
So get to 90%, 2-foot rule. Yeah. And did you see it when you were walking in, or are you just seeing it because you're like looking at this teeny tiny specific moment in time, right? Focus on getting it done. Pivot as you go along.
Yeah, that's the biggest difference between Andrew and I. Andrew is like, he sees construction, like he sees all deficiencies right away. I don't. I'm like walking as a tenant, as a renter, right? I'm like, oh yeah, this is good enough.
One of the things I sometimes tell people is like, you bring in somebody impartial who, like, bring your girlfriend.
Yeah.
And things that may alarm her, as long as she's reasonably interested in housing, fix those things. Like even sometimes things that don't technically matter from construction point, like if the receptacle cover plate is slightly loose or it's not covered, someone who doesn't know might think, oh, this is an electrical hazard. It's not, but somebody might feel that way. Fix that.
100%.
Right? And so bring somebody who is not going to be so involved as you are.
Bring a mother. Mothers are the best.
Mothers are good, yeah.
Bring a mother, right? I don't know, your mother, your friend's mother, whatever. Bring a mother through the room. That they are going to pick out the stuff that is motherly, that's important about being part of a home. That I find is really good. They're going to be like, oh, there's a towel bar missing here. And you're like, oh yeah, that's not a reno thing, but yeah, it makes sense. Or be like, there's not enough drawers.
Functional stuff.
I can't. Like I've seen so many times. This is like, I'm in the reno guy. I stay in the reno lane. Like I'm not trying to be a numbers guy or wholesaler or a flipper. I do what I do and I want to do best. Yeah. I've seen videos where you like newer investors with a coach or a mortgage broker that's in the industry or whatever, and they're like working on our new kitchen design, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh my god, there's like a million things wrong with the kitchen, and why is the investor getting advice about a kitchen from a mortgage guy? Man, I have so many examples, and then I was like, I don't want to upset anybody, but I also think it should be discussed, like some of the issues with that kind of thing. But like, yeah, get advice from the best people who are doing that best stuff.
And you'll notice I think the best people will usually, when they start to veer out of their lane, they'll refer you, or they'll say you should talk to somebody else. Like people sometimes ask me, like based off of house flipping, like certain tax questions, and I can tell them how we do certain things, but I'm like, you need to talk to your accountant. and see like what they can substantiate. And I think that's the thing. People who have the answer to everything are usually full of shit.
Yeah, we only know the directional stuff and who to hire to actually deal with that specific problem, right? That's it. Like you don't need to know too much in business, right? But for the things that we're good at, obviously that it goes in depth, right? But anything else, we don't really try to be the expert of everything, because the moment that you're the expert of everything, you're nobody. Like you don't know anything.
Or you might know a little bit about everything, but you're not going to be an expert at anything.
Exactly.
Right? And then why try to specialize just in this, like material life cycles, different renovation tactics on how to get, but like that's it. You ask me a mortgage question, I have no idea, and just let me know where to sign, and that's as much as I know.
Yeah.
Right? Where's the little sticker? That's all I know about a mortgage contract.
Have you ever had somebody send you documents and they don't give you the sticker or tell you where to sign?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So
annoying.
irritating. Like,
it's
why
very
do
annoying.
people not do that?
Who reads through this stuff?
I know.
That's what I want to know.
That's what your job is. That's why we hired you, right? You're supposed to put the sticky thing. The sticky thing's what I paid for.
I need the arrow. Where's the arrow?
Yeah.
No highlighters, no X.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Why don't we talk about the second question I asked you? Like
Accountability?
15 minutes ago. Yes.
Accountability. How do you keep contractors accountable?
Yeah, that's if anything goes wrong. Like you hire someone, right? Okay, you left the deposit, and as you're watching them working, you're just like, it doesn't feel right because certain things just doesn't align, or even the schedule, or they've been not on site for too long. How do you prevent that or hold them accountable with the timeline versus when do you need to replace them?
So for me, I don't do deposits.
With your clients, or you don't do deposits
With my clients or my contractors.
Okay.
I don't do deposits. I will fund them enough to take care of what they need to do. For example, the easiest example would be demo. What cost does the demo guy have when he's doing the demo? The bin. I'll order the bin. You do the demo. When the demo's done, you get paid. I'm happy. You're happy.
You have an understanding of supply costs, though.
Yes. No, for sure. But that's what I do. So I do phases of work instead of percentages, right? Like I never do a deposit. Like if I'm going to do a deposit, I'm going to do a deposit on the demo. If I was a new investor, I wouldn't do a deposit on the whole thing. How do you know that contractor is going to get you through the whole thing?
Yeah.
How do you know when he starts painting the wall, it's not your face, right? Like you don't know that until they start doing it. So why would you risk that with deposits, right? And then if you are going to give it a deposit, how do I find the guy if he disappears? If he can change his number, that deposit better be really low. If he can't change his number and he's got an office and you know who he is, and a lot of people are working with him, or you can go to 50 sites that he's at, okay, then you're kind of covered, right?
Yeah.
If something goes wrong.
But that actually also touches into another thing, because if something like that does happen, we get some scathed people who will come, and the issue that they had is, I paid so-and-so so much money, and they demolished everything and then left, right? And they overpaid for essentially the demolition. And there's contractors who will do this, and the reason why they're so not afraid to do something is because when the money is like a few $1,000s that the investor is out, what do you even do about that? Like, what, somebody's going to change the number? But how are you going to go after them? It's not worth it to take them to court. So what do you do?
What can you do?
Yeah, do you get like really mafia about this and start visiting, knocking on their doors or something, or like what do you do?
Mafia? We'll show up with burrito sticks and just like break it on the no, you can't. Like there's this is why like referrals are good, right? Because you know that person's done something for somebody. And the other thing that I do, like kind of this more of like fact checking your contractor is, do they have a social media account? Does it look like they know what they're doing? From a social media perspective, we are in the busiest construction season in history, I would say. If that guy is free to take on any job right away, big red flag. If you can't go to a site that he is not sweeping up on or doing a touch up and meet somebody else that you don't know, that he doesn't know, and they could show you something that's brand new, big red flag. I had an investor, a developer guy, he was like, hey, Mark, I met you at the conference. I want to meet you. I want to like do some work with you. I Googled your company, checked out on your website. I don't see much work on your website. How much work do you really do? I was like, okay, meet me at my shop. We'll get in the car and I'll drive you to the 20 active sites that I have. And then you tell me if I'm not a contractor, right? Like if you can't do that with the person you're hiring, I would be worried, especially today, right? Like today, there is so much work. And that's the scary part. I can go to the dollar store, spend $50, get a tool belt, brushes, rollers, and I can start knocking on doors and I will get jobs all day.
Let's say an investor is in a position where they are considering hiring a good general, let's call him a handyman, okay? They're not handyman, they're more talented than that, right? But let's just say a generalist, right? What do you think is a good either hourly, daily, or yearly salary to pay someone? You're going to retain them full time.
As least as possible. That's my answer.
What do you think's realistic? Yeah.
What's
to
realistic?
find somebody who can do a bunch of things.
So this is kind of like, for me, this is where I go back to this kind of thing. Like, what is that person trying to achieve? Look, my dad is a good general handyman. He's the reason why I started my reno company, because he was very handy and he does it. That guy does stuff, practically pays people for the work he does. I'm like, Dad, what are you doing, man?
Let's be honest, they're not good at that part.
But he's not doing it for the money. He's just doing to make sure that the money he wants to spend for the month, he can make while doing some work. That's all he cares about. Does that make him better than somebody who's making $100,000 or less? It's not. It's just, what does he want? What does that person need?
Yeah.
Some guys want a big fat paycheck so they can be like, I'm the best in the industry.
Yeah.
Right? So that's honestly like a big thing. Part of what we talked about earlier is like, the number doesn't matter. It's, who are they? What are they trying to achieve? And what do they want out of it? There's no right number. You can find a really good guy. I'm telling you, I have some guys that are phenomenal people, and some people will probably pay them $100,000 a year. And I pay my guy like 60. Is that the right number? Because he can make $100,000 somewhere else. It's what keeps him happy, what keeps him motivated, what drives him to perform the best for you. That's the right number.
Yeah.
And there is no generalization of a number, because it's people. It's not like, okay, how many orders can this person like fulfill? Because contracting isn't a straight line.
Yeah.
So if you can, like, it's art. It's art. It's honestly art. So like, what is an artist worth? I don't know. Ask the guy who paints sidewalk chalk and the person in the gallery. Who's right? What's the right price? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for that. I think it's, I don't have an answer. Like, for me, I look at people as people, and like, what drives people, what motivates people. How do I keep him the happiest and always under my brand and my business, because I don't want to rehire people or retrain people. That's another difficult layer, and that, I think, is the true cost. But what that is, I don't know. It could be all over the place.
You have an enterprise, and it actually will work very different from you. So yes, I think the question for an individual is going to be extremely different from the way that you might do it. But
my counter on that is that, what happens if the guy comes back the next year and say, hey, listen, Mark, like I feel like the number that you're compensating me is no longer enough. Like I'm asking for 20% raise, right? Like, how do you handle that kind of situation? Because the pricing for that specific role is not standardized.
We try to do quarterly employment reviews, including with our subs. And one of the big things I do is like, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? What are your family goals? What are your financial goals? What are your business goals? Are you trying to grow and expand your business? Well, then let's help you do that. I would love for Andrew to have 300 guys, so I only got to work with Andrew. I don't want to work with 300 different contractors that are doing one unit at a time. That's like a mess. I want it to be Andrew's mess, not mine. Right? So I do a lot of that, and that has honestly given me a lot more segue on how to manage like the wage expectation. It's not always about the wage. Maybe it's like, you know what? Every year, as part of your compensation, I'm going to send you and your family to Cuba, which might cost me $5,000. But that $5,000,
that's what we did.
That $5,000 might be way better than $20,000 could ever be.
This is a man who understands that money is not the only currency by a long shot. So
That's
I mean,
awesome.
like, yeah, it's true. And we do have some guys who work with us just because, even though they have been to other jobs that paid more, but they work with us because we are considerably less of a headache, right? Less stress. People can go home like more or less on time, right? You know, and that means a lot to people, especially when you have family, kids, and like you just kind of like understanding people's love language.
Yeah, right? No, of course. Yeah, like even for us, like I run a very like agile business model. I am not like, I'm the boss, this is how the world's gonna work.
Yeah.
I'm more like, hey guys, we switched screws. Here's a couple packages. Give me your feedback. You're gonna be like, these suck, or they like, you know, there's always like a nut in them or a burr in it, and like I'm throwing out half of the screws. It's worse. Cheaper for me, worse for you.
Yeah.
That's not good, because at the end of the day, I need you to be the most productive, because that's how we make the most money as a business. So I truly believe in the people, and that's honestly like money, like work, decisions. I come up with like what direction I think we should drive the ship in, but nothing else.
Ping and I talk a lot about the difference between bottom-up model of business and then the top-down model of business, right? Being, for anybody who may not be too familiar with it, it's basically starting from the bottom and then replacing yourself as you build your business up, and then you take officially the position of CEO or whatever. And then top down is like you do it from an investment standpoint, and you hire the expertise, and you don't need to do all the work going up. But I think there comes obviously certain pros and cons to each, and I just want to know like what you consider yourself in terms of structuring, right? Because you know, if you did all the work, then you understand the intricacies, right? It's kind of like in the army. You come through the ranks, you understand the intricacies, you understand what they're dealing with. but you go top down and there might be a disconnect, but maybe you're better at recruiting talent and you don't need to have those expertise because the talent you recruited is better.
So one thing I learned in the Army, we have a rule, 1 down, 2 up. You should know the job of the guy below you and know the job of the guy 2 above you. You should have a good understanding of both of those things.
2 above you, okay. That's interesting.
When the guy 2 above you disappears, that could be catastrophic if nobody knows his. 1 below, like typically below is more realistically able to be re-recruited or rehired. The guys at the top, I think, can be more critical to a business, right? Like if Andrew disappears tomorrow, that's like a big piece of the flipping business if he manages 90% of the construction.
Yeah, they were out of the business.
For example, my brother, right? Like my brother runs the construction division. It's his own business. Like I don't run that business anymore. I don't have that business. I have my own reno company, but he's got his own reno company, and like they're seamlessly, but we obviously work together. If I die, there'll just be another guy with a taco hat on his head. That's it. Like nothing's gonna change, right? Or if he dies, I can step down until we find the like. So I am a big believer on like overlap, and yeah, I don't. I like hiring for talent, but all talent doesn't understand kind of like where you came from. I think there's like a mix. That's why I try to run like an agile business model. I'm not the smartest guy or the dumbest guy, and whoever I hire doesn't make him the smartest guy or the dumbest guy. I try to be like we're a square, we're a team, we're like one. The army will always beat the leader, like the soul fighter, I guess. I don't know.
I saw a TikTok where it had a bunch of people walking around. He says, you want to create a brand in a company where when everybody's walking, you have no idea who the leader is. They all look that good. Right?
Yeah. Like,
I mean, performers.
Everybody knows me for my hat.
Yeah.
But if you two walked around the multifamily conference tomorrow or a conference or some event, people are going to come up to you and be like, hey, Taco, nobody knows this guy. Nobody knows this guy.
Where did he go?
I've probably been in a bunch of rooms as this guy.
Yeah.
Nobody even cared who I was. And now this guy showed up, and all of a sudden, be like, Taco, where have you been all my life? I've been standing right beside you this whole time, man. What do you think of me? No, I haven't. I've thankfully, we've been able to build to the size that we have been without kind of outfacing anybody or really doing anything. Like I've known about you guys and stuff like that, but I've never had to I never got to a point where I was like, okay, now we're ready to like go bigger, right? Like we've just been getting to this point, like starting a manufacturing business or even just understanding that whole, it's like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And then now that we're here, now I'm like, okay, now we can keep going and fulfill a lot of dreams and desires and a lot of cool stuff that we're doing. And that's kind of why I'm here. So
yeah,
it's just a tool, right? Like, but anybody can wear it, and you will like wear that and that. Everybody will know you. As long as you go by Taco, you're set. We almost look alike. You're set. You know Renos too, buddy.
Yeah. I can.
If he steals my brand, guys.
There you go.
We need to have a gyro. For Greek.
There's a Middle Eastern guy, and he's like, I should wear a falafel. I'll be taco and falafel. The food thing is, it just, I don't know. I mean, it's because of the army. Everybody calls me Taco. Yeah. And like all my friends in the army are really close friends of mine too, so they still call me Taco, and it just worked. My wife bought it as a joke when we went to Vegas. She was like, it'd be funny if you wore a taco hat on your head. And we went to a pool party, talked to a bunch of people, and they were like, everybody was trying to talk to me because I was the one guy wearing a taco hat. And then, there was like some moments and I was like, man, I'm wearing this in the wrong room. Imagine I wore this in a networking room. And the first time I really wore it in the networking room was that big room. And that's where I met.
the multifamily conference.
And that's where I met everybody. I met everybody. My Instagram followers went up by like 750 people over that weekend. And they were like hand scanned people. Yeah.
That's funny. By the way, I wanted to point out something before you start. Yeah. The way that you're leading your organization, right, it's a very servant type of leadership, which is actually the best leadership that I'm seeing, like in terms of like all the big enterprise, because they're trying to bring the gap between the top layer of management to the sort of ground level employees as close as possible, and that way all the voices can be delivered, right? Like you get to hear the feedback. People are not afraid of saying that because you're essentially there to support them, to help them do their job, right? And based on each role, what you're doing is really try to, like we talk about the GWC model all the time. You find someone for that person needs to get it, wants it, and have the capacity to do it. So as soon as you hire the right person who understands the job, who has the capacity, now with the compensation, it's like, okay, what do you want? Let me align that. And then once these three checks off, this person's good. Yeah, so I really like the way that you describe your people, your team, your organization. I think it's very powerful leadership skill that you're applying to your company.
Thank you. I don't know.
So-
I was in the Army, right? I think that's where I learned a lot of these lessons. I've in the Army, and I've been under many styles of leadership. There's like guys that just yell at you for everything, and like first time, sure, I ran. Second time, okay. Third time, I'm like, okay, this is just noise, right? Like whether I ran, overperformed my objective, or I sauntered and performed my objective, it didn't matter because that guy was always going to yell. And that's not going to drive people, motivate people, or change the way they operate. But guys that took the time to truly understand us, and I prided myself on being a leader like that. Like we were doing, a recce patrol. We hadn't slept in like 2 days. It's my time to choose what I'm doing. I have to plan out my mission, tell the higher ups what we're going to do, and then take my team out on patrol. So the first thing I would do is because they would call you to get your orders. And when they would call, right before they called me to get my orders, I would tell my number 2 in command, I was like, everybody go to sleep. I will wake you guys up. Because what are they going to do? We don't know what our task is. I'm tired. I want to sleep.
Yeah.
Everybody just sleep. And other people were like, get your stuff ready, or like prep your weapons, or like, just
Hurry up and wait.
yeah, hurry up and wait. And I'm like, no, man, like I need my guys to sleep so that they could be feeling the best that they could possibly be. I was exhausted. I'm writing notes. I'm there. I'm like falling asleep, doing like listening to orders, like looking at my notes and being like, the hell is this squiggly line? Right? Like, 'cause I'm so tired, just so tired from being exhausted. But at least my guys are sleeping. At least my guys are rested. Because whatever I do away from them isn't going to change like the mission or the objective, right? So if I could make my guys feel the best, then when I'm like, okay, guys, we need to run, or we're late, or we're rushing, they're going to rush, they're going to run, they're going to hustle because they know I did my best to take care of their interests.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I think so much of what you say actually touches on to some of the things we talked about in the beginning, where, people who are just doing more will learn more and develop more talents and skills that you discover about yourself. Because I won't get into it, right? But some of the things you're saying, you obviously brought this into your business etiquette. Let's say, things from the Army, things from where you're working, things from your father, and doing construction renovations. And I wonder sometimes if these things are learned traits from your experiences, or if it is like nature versus nurture, right? Because even when I think about it as you're talking, I reflect on certain things. Like I also went to the Army when I was in Greece. And I also went through nursing, and I'm wondering if my nature has an inclination to get into things where you have to make decisions, or if I can make decisions because I went through those things.
Mm-hmm.
And it sometimes gets a little cloudy as to what came first. But the point, I think, and one of the elements I think that really highlights your success is that you're adaptive, you're understanding, and you learn. These are all key elements, I think, to being able to run a successful enterprise. So I can understand why, you're able to teach people and why you're able to run things as successfully as you are, which now I think we need to really get into the Discord thing. So, because people want to get into the room with you. Because like, that's the thing, is like, if somebody wants to learn, they want to join the Discord, they want to get into the room, how do they go about joining that?
Okay, so you can follow us on all our socials, but our Discord website or direct link is discord.gg/grow network.
Grow Network.
And
okay.
you click on that and you'll accept. And then once you go into our Discord, it's going to ask you to accept all the rules, like be a good person in the room. And then it's going to ask you to pick your role, which is what's really unique about what I'm doing, because I find networking is tough. Mm-hmm. So you go in and there's going to be a bunch of roles, and I'm always adding roles. If anybody thinks of a better role to add, I will definitely do it. So we have wholesaler, retailers, contractors, business professionals, engineers, architects. I'm kind of like breaking it out as the different people show up.
Magician.
And magicians, hey, there's a lot of magicians. Maybe they got some magic tricks they can help us with. And each of those roles is assigned a color based on their part in the business. So like there's like acquisition, I guess, when like, wholesalers, real estate agents, part of acquisitions, financing, like mortgage guys, right? Like those guys, private lenders.
It makes it actually is almost like giving people a talking point to start a conversation.
It's an assist.
Yeah.
It's an assist. So when we network in a big room, we're all going to show up. We'll be orange because contractors are orange, and he'll be purple because he's an agent.
Yeah.
Well, if you're looking for a deal, go talk to all the purple people. You're looking for a good trades guy or somebody who's helping you with the middle portion of the thing, go talk to the orange guys.
Yeah.
And like, imagine now you can be in a really big room and get what you want out of the room without ever having to really know everybody in the room.
I know the next one you need. You need to have Jack.
Jack. Why Jack?
Because there's Jack of all trades.
Yeah, but then he's still a reno guy.
That I find to be an interesting thing. Actually, I never thought about it like that because
They're helping you with the process of the house, right? Whether it's before or after, it doesn't matter.
I guess it does
in the
say
house.
trades in it. So
Jack
jack
of
of all trades. Yeah. Okay. Never mind. Cut that up.
He wins.
But yeah, and then like, you know, like, so imagine now, like, at least you can be in a room and like, even as a new investor, maybe you have some contracting questions. Great. Talk to the contractor, but at least you can focus. That was like the biggest thing I hated about that big conference that we went to. It's just so many people. I talk to people. I even meet people today, and this is like months and months later, where they're like, "Hey, Taco, I saw you at the multifamily conference, but I couldn't get near you because there were troves of people around you. And I just wanted to say hi and like get to know who you were." Like, that person saw me, tried to talk to me, and they couldn't because there's just so many people. People just came to me because I was wearing the hat. And then they started talking to me and they're like, "Oh, fuck, this guy's a pretty smart guy." If they knew I was a contractor and you were out there chasing for contractors, then at least you could network purposefully.
Yeah.
And I think that's super key, especially as you get in, like in a smaller room, 10 people. I don't need to wear my taco hat. I can just introduce everybody and I'll say my name is Taco, and they're going to be like, "No way."
Yeah.
And that's good enough. That's memorable enough.
Yeah.
But if there's like 1,000 people, you got to wear the hat. Makes it so much easier.
Networking simplified, right? Color coding the people.
You have to, like, just the industry, right? So at least you could focus on
They
what
do
you
this in
want to get.
university, right? Everybody
Yeah.
has their colors, their welcome week shirts, and everybody knows what program everybody's in.
And then, so part of that into the Discord, back to the Discord. Wow, we're like really pivoting here. So in the Discord, now you know when somebody makes a comment in there, and when you log in, you'll go under whatever, you know, like role you selected,
Yeah.
and then you know who's commenting on what. If somebody's like, "Oh, check out this deal," and I'll be like, "Yeah, this is a great deal." Well, I'm just a contractor. Does it make, like, you could kind of value the opinion of the person responding based on who they are. And then we do lives 3 days a week right now. We're striving for 5, and they're like 1 hour lives, and we record them and then we'll repost them in our Discord community. So if you missed any, you can watch any. What I love about Discord, and I've been in part of like WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups and, you know, Telegram and all these things, it's just a big mess. Like, try to find some cool thing, even like in TikTok, like try to find a video that you saw that was really cool in your phone after you swiped up. Like, it gets lost in the abyss. Yeah. Discord, at least you can kind of create channels like Reddit and different topics of conversation. And as the conversations grow, you can kind of add more channels and refine more of it. So you can go into, like, I have pre-built stuff for like as we get busier, but imagine you can go into a community, click under houses, and under houses, click under material advice.
Yeah.
Or you could click in the thing, click under agents, click under finding a deal, click under 10 units to 15 units, and find like really what you're looking for.
Really specific conversations,
right? Yeah. And that is super powerful. And that's what I think, like, the best place to have kind of everybody working together. It's not about just having a contractor in the room. You need all of the pieces. Real estate investing is a big piece. There's too many people just trying to tackle it like, I'm a wholesaler, so everybody come learn how to wholesale. Like, okay, great. You got a whole bunch of deals ready to go, but you don't have no money, you don't know people to buy it. And then you have the person who buys it, how's he going to execute it? And the guy who executes it, how's he going to sell it or stabilize it or refine it? Like, you need all of the pieces. And that's why I figured I'd build this community, which is called GROW, which stands for Giving Real Estate Owners Wealth.